And it may have been Ms. Medina, provided the clerk's office with an audio that appears to be a communication with police dispatch. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor. It's a copy of the audio requesting that the street sweep would be sent back.
Yeah. And do we know who the voice on the audio is?
We do not.
All right. And is that agreed upon? There's no dispute there? I take it that's what's referenced in Sergeant McHale's report, where he says, I informed the operations situation, and they were able to get hold of Boston Public Works and sent the sweeper back. So that is the recorded voice referenced in Sergeant McHale's report. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. If I understand it correctly, Mr. McMaster, is he present? Has he arrived?
He's here, but the council's going to first call Detective McIsaac.
All right, Detective McIsaac. All right.
Your Honor, just for ease of to make this thing easier, I was going to suggest that we mark the binder's contents that we gave to the court as Exhibit Number 1, and I don't know how you wish to mark the other items that the defense provided.
It seems to me the other items now to include the Google map, Lyons memorandum, and the handwritten map I put into the black binder, and that would seem to me to now be complete, at least as to what has been offered by both sides. Mr. Baez, is that agreeable that we mark the whole binder as Exhibit 1 for purposes of this hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Someone who's the testimony should give this court is you now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar to give truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Mr. Lee.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, could you just introduce yourself to the court reporter and please spell your last name?
Good afternoon. My name is Detective Paul McIsaac. My last name is spelled Macisaac.
Detective, how long have you been with the Boston Police Department?
I'm in my 29th year.
And where are you currently assigned?
I'm assigned to the homicide unit.
How long have you been assigned to the homicide unit?
I think this week it'll be 7 years.
I'd like to direct your attention to early morning hours of July 16th, 2012. Were you assigned to the homicide unit on that date?
Yes, I was.
And were you part of a squad at that time?
Yes.
Can you tell us who the members of the squad were in 2012?
At that time, it was Sergeant Detective Mark Sullivan was my supervisor, and my partner was Detective Joshua Cummings.
Detective, at or around the time of about 2:45 in the morning on the 16th, did you become involved in an investigation into the fatal shooting deaths of two individuals near the intersection of Harold Street and Shawmut Ave?
Yes, I did.
And how did you become notified of that incident?
I was notified by Operations Division of our department.
And at some point, did you respond to the Tufts Medical Center to check on the condition of the two gunshot victims who later succumbed to their injuries?
No, there was just one person at Tufts.
I'm sorry. At some point, did you arrive at the scene at Shawmut Ave and Harold Street?
I did.
All right. And at some point, did you become aware through your role in the investigation of an individual who was operating a street sweeper at or around the time this incident took place?
Yes.
And can you tell us what you did with respect to the street sweeper?
The street sweeper was parked up at on Marginal by Shawmut, and I went up there to speak to him.
And
That was your first contact with the street sweeper?
Yes.
Prior to that, had you had any telephone conversations or any other kind of communication with the street sweeper?
No, I did not.
So am I to assume that all the information you received regarding the street sweeper came from other investigators in the case?
Yes.
Tell us what happened when you got to Marginal Road and began and saw the street
Let's
sweeper.
go back a step. I want a little bit more.
Okay.
You were notified by operations of a shooting.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And where did you first go?
I went straight to the scene.
All right. And when you went to the scene, were there other homicide detectives there?
Just Sergeant Sullivan.
And what did you do when you arrived at the scene?
I had a conversation with Sergeant Sullivan.
And then what?
I started to examine around the scene of the BMW.
And then?
Then I was notified that there was a surviving victim at Tufts Medical Center. And then from there, I went to Tufts Medical Center to speak to that person.
And that was Mr. Freire?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And after you spoke with him, did you return to the scene?
I did, Your Honor.
You go anywhere between Tufts and the scene?
No, Your Honor.
And you just indicated that you met a street sweeper up on Marginal.
That is correct.
Was
Your Honor.
that before going to Tufts or after
It was
Tufts?
after Tufts, Your Honor.
So when you returned to the scene, do you recall about when that was?
I returned to the scene, and then I was told that there was a street sweeper up the street to go talk to him.
Does that mean the sweeper was already there and waiting for you?
To me, yes, it was, Your Honor.
And when you were told about a street sweeper, do you recall who told you?
I believe it was Sergeant Sullivan, and I believe it was with Sergeant McHale at the time. I believe it. I'm pretty sure it was Sergeant Sullivan who told me about it.
And at that point, were you aware of whether or not the street sweeper had been interviewed by anyone?
Not a detective, but I mean, I just assumed that he was spoken to by a police officer, that we were notified that he was there. But to be interviewed, no, that was my intention to go to interview him myself.
And did Sergeant Sullivan assign you to go interview him, or did you do that on your own?
No, I was told to go there by Sergeant Sullivan to interview.
All right, Mr. Lee, you can pick it up from there.
Thank you. Detective McIsaac, other than being told to go interview the street sweeper, were you provided any other information by Sergeant Detective Sullivan or anybody else regarding the street sweeper?
Yes, that he had come down Sharman Ave over the overpass onto Harold.
And what time frame was that he drove over Sharman Ave onto Harold Street?
It was pretty close to right after the incident happened.
And did you learn the name of the individual who was operating the street sweeper?
Yes.
And what did you learn his name to be?
Warren McMaster.
When you interviewed Mr. McMasters, was that done at Marginal Road or on Marginal Road?
Yes.
Do you recall who else was there when you interviewed Mr. McMasters?
There was another police officer who showed me where he was, but I conducted the interview by myself.
And that's typical of what would happen once you being the homicide unit arrived on the scene.
Yeah,
Meaning
that's
that
correct.
The detectives from the homicide unit would conduct the interviews.
That is correct.
Was the interview at that time recorded?
No, it was not.
Did you take any notes as you interviewed Mr. McMasters?
I did.
All right. And what was, in sum and substance, what Mr. McMasters told you at the time you interviewed him on Marginal Road?
He works for American Sweeping. He works that area. He was coming off Marginal onto Sharman. As he was going on Sharman, he saw a BMW on the road. He said he saw a man out of the car that was bleeding. He drove right by doing his route, and then he took a left on Marginal and continued on his way. Strike that. Left on Harold Street, or continued on his route.
Was there any discussion, or did you ever ask him where he was driving the street sweeper once he turned on to Shawmut? That is, what part of Shawmut?
Yes, I did. He said he took a left onto Shawmut and that he was doing the gutter curb to the right side of the road, and that's where he hugged the right side of the road down Shawmut Ave onto Herald.
And was that information that he provided to you reflected in any report that you later authored?
Yes, it is.
And what report was that?
That'll be my initial response report.
Now, during the course of your interview of Mr. McMasters on Marginal Road on the morning of July 16, 2012, did Mr. McMasters ever tell you anything about having observed a white-colored SUV with a female basically sticking up through the sunroof of the vehicle?
No, he never said that.
Are you now aware of that statement?
I am.
When was the first time you became aware of that statement?
Last Thursday.
And can you tell us the circumstances under which you became aware of that statement?
Mr. McMaster responded to court last Thursday, and we have never prepped him or talked to him since this incident. So Detective Cummings and I sat down with him to speak to him about his statements. And plus, we also had information that he had spoken to a defense investigator, and we wanted to know what was said between those two also.
The information about his having spoken to a defense investigator, did that come at the same time on Thursday, March 2nd?
Yes.
All right. When you interviewed Mr. McMasters or spoke to Mr. McMasters on Thursday, March 2nd, was that interview recorded?
Yes, it was.
And where did that take place?
That took place in this building in an interview room on the 6th floor.
And who was present other than yourself and Mr. McMasters, if anybody?
Detective Joshua Cummings.
Now, during the course of the interview with Mr. McMasters on last Thursday, that is March 2nd, did the topic of the female in the SUV come up during the course of the conversation?
It did.
Did you indicate to him during the course of the conversation that, to your memory, he had never mentioned that to you when you interviewed him initially on July 16th of 2012?
I did.
And what was his response when you indicated that you did not recall him ever saying that?
First he was like, I told somebody, I told you, and then as we talked more, he said he was treated harshly by uniform officers on scene. He got scared, and that's when he didn't want to talk. He didn't want to provide that information to us. He said that his boss told him not to tell anybody anything. Also, he said they were mean to him. He called it dreadful.
Did he ultimately acknowledge on tape in that interview that he had not told you initially in July of 2012 about the white SUV with the female in the sunroof?
That is correct.
Right. Did he indicate to you, though, that he may have said something along those lines to some unidentified uniformed officers?
He did say that, yes.
Did he identify or help you identify in any way who it was he may have made those statements to, that is, the uniformed officers?
Yes. Was he black, white? He said he's possibly white. I mean, that's as far as we got with that.
At this time, I'd ask that the disc of the recorded interview be marked as exhibit. With no objection.
That may be marked Exhibit 2.
No objection. Detective, taking you back to July 16th, 2012, while you were at Marginal Road, did you ever instruct any officer, sergeant, detective, or anybody from the Boston Police Department to respond to Frontage Road after the conclusion of your interview with Mr. McMasters?
No, I did not.
All right. And tell us how it was that your interview with Mr. McMasters on the morning of July 16th 2012 end?
My main concern to talk to Mr. McMaster that night was concerning possibly his street sweeper. He may have picked up shell casings from the scene. So when I spoke to him, that he did the far right side of the street by the gutter, that would be too far away from where the shell casings would have landed. So there was no way he could have picked them up from where he was. So in my estimation, that there was nothing that he picked up from the shell casings, so that I let I actually ran it by Sergeant Sullivan, and then he was allowed to leave.
Okay. You were at the scene on Marginal Road, so you were able to see the width of Shawmut Ave as well as the width of the street sweeper that he was operating when you made these determinations?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when Mr. McMasters left Marginal Road after having spoken to you, did he leave in the street sweeper?
I can only assume he did. I didn't see him leave. I walked away. I can only assume he drove away.
Okay. Did you become aware of the fact that Mr. McMasters subsequently, after leaving, went through and did an inspection of the hopper in his sweeper?
Yes, last Thursday he told me that.
Okay, and is that the first time you learned that an inspection of the hopper had been made by Mr. McMasters?
Yes, that's correct.
To this day, are you aware of any Boston police officer, sergeant, detective, or anybody from the Boston Police who was present for the inspection of that hopper?
No, I am not.
Detective, in preparation for the trial of this matter, had you made numerous attempts to locate Mr. McMasters?
Yes, I have.
And at some point, were you or somebody in your squad able to serve him with a trial subpoena on February 13th of this year?
I did that myself.
And that trial subpoena instructed Mr. McMasters to appear when?
On the 1st of March.
And did Mr. Masters appear on March 1st of 2017?
He did not.
What was done in response to that? Did you make an attempt to reserve Mr. McMasters?
He was called.
He was called. And did you make phone contact with him?
There was contact made with Mr. Masters on the 1st. He said he overslept and he'll come in tomorrow.
And tomorrow being Thursday, March 2nd.
That's
and
correct.
Did he come in on that date?
Yes, he did.
And that's the same date you did the interview?
That is correct.
And did you serve him, or did somebody in your squad serve him with a trial subpoena on that date?
Detective Cummings served him.
And were you there when that took place?
Yes, sir.
And when was he served for? That is, when did the subpoena call for his return?
He was served 2 subpoenas, one for Friday that he was on call, and then one for Monday.
Thank you, Detective.
I have a moment, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Right you are. Detective, you just testified to Judge Locke that you had made several attempts to reach Mr. McMasters prior to trial. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were unsuccessful.
That is correct.
Now, he still works for the same place,
Actually, I didn't know that at the time.
but you know that now.
Yes,
And you had his supervisor's phone number in your notes from that night.
that's correct. Well, they had a company phone number
You had a phone number to reach out to him.
to his supervisor.
Correct.
I believe it's the company phone number, not his supervisor's phone number, I believe.
What efforts exactly did you attempt to get a hold of him before the trial?
I called Mr. McMasters. We've actually spoken on the phone, but he changed his number, like, I think maybe once, and I could think maybe twice. And he also changed an address.
Still pretty easy for you as a detective to find people in this town, right?
Well, I mean, I actually spoke to him on the phone, but like in person, I've never met it. I didn't meet him in person until last Thursday.
And you reached out to him how many times exactly?
By phone or going to his home, what would you like?
Either way.
I went to his home twice, by phone, and countless times. I couldn't tell you how many times.
Now, do you have any reports that you filled out that express or discuss that these attempts to reach this witness?
No, just a subpoena would say I left it at his usual place of abode. That was about the only one that was signed. That would be the only document. But no reports were written.
You're aware that as a detective, when you work on a homicide case, you're supposed to fill out reports as to what you do, correct?
In a way, yes.
Okay. Well, in a way, as you describe what you do, you fill out a report?
Yeah, but I mean, I just attempted to locate someone. I actually didn't locate that person, so I didn't
Listen to my
do
question.
anything. No, I'm listening to your question.
Okay. When you do something in a homicide case, in a way, you're supposed to write it out, right?
I do.
Okay. And you submit this so that way everyone knows what activities you've done on any specific case.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the night of the incident, you wrote a 3-page report about your activities the night of the shooting, correct?
Correct?
And this here should entail everything that you did that night.
I wouldn't say everything, but the most pertinent information, yes.
Okay. So, in a way, it should have everything that you did.
Yes.
Okay. And if you look at this report, do you have a copy of your report?
Not in front of me now.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Judge? You may. I'm going to hand you a copy of your report as well as the transcript of your interview so we can reference it later. Does that appear to be your report, sir?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, if you take a look at this report, in the 3 pages that you write, you outline pretty much everything that you saw there that other people had done, right?
Other people have done, sir?
Yes. You arrived on the scene, you saw Detective Sullivan, he informed you that there were 2 victims, you entered and examined and saw the BMW, you observed 2 males were sitting in a vehicle, things like that.
Correct.
Okay. These are basically just your observations and what other people are doing, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in this entire report, it only discusses 2 things that you did that evening, right? Go ahead and take a moment to look at it.
What, that I arrived on scene, talked to Sullivan, I did that. I examined around the BMW, I did that. I observed inside the vehicle.
Take a moment to look at it, sir.
I'm
Just read it over to yourself, and I want to discuss the things that you actually did this evening. When you're done, just let me know.
Okay.
In this report, it says that you've only spoke to 2 witnesses in this case on this evening.
That's correct.
Okay. And that was one of the victims, Mr. Friere.
Correct?
Okay. And the other one, Mr. McMasters.
Correct.
So in the entire evening, the only 2 people that you were assigned to interview were 2 people.
That's correct.
Okay. And when you interviewed Mr. Friere, well, let me ask, obviously when you interview someone, you want to get as much information as possible.
You would like to, yes.
Okay. This is your one opportunity to get things as closest to the incident as possible.
I wouldn't say my only opportunity, no.
To get it as closest to the incident as possible.
You would like to, yes.
Because if you wait longer, memories fade, things happen in between, other people can influence their testimony, things like that, right?
Could happen.
Okay. And that's why you want to speak to people as soon as possible.
You would like to, yes.
When you spoke to Mr. Friere that evening at the hospital, you didn't record him.
No, I did not.
Okay. When you spoke to Mr. McMasters,
Overruled.
when you spoke to Mr. McMasters, you didn't record him either.
That is correct.
Okay. And now, obviously, it's best to record someone so there's no misunderstandings as to what was told to you that evening versus what's told to you now. Right?
You would like to record, and then, but sometimes you just don't.
Okay. You had a tape recorder that night with you?
Yes.
Okay. So you could have recorded him, but you didn't.
Correct.
And instead, you took about a paragraph of notes, right?
About that.
Okay. And in here, it makes no mention of what he told you, correct?
No.
Okay. Let me rephrase that. Other than that he swept on the right side of Shamat, there's absolutely nothing of what he told you that evening, correct?
No, incorrect.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm not referring to biographical information like names, phone numbers, things like
Well,
that.
that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
He gave me his supervisor. And he told me which way he continued on his route.
So, I'll clarify the question for you then, sir. Other than biographical information, the only thing you wrote down of what he told you that night was swept far right side of Shamat.
Correct.
Okay. And how long did you speak to him, sir?
A couple of minutes.
Okay. So, you're a homicide detective of 7 years experience, correct?
Correct.
You've got 29 years on the job.
Correct.
And you're now told that a street sweeper has gone through the crime scene.
Correct.
Okay. That's a huge problem for preservation of a crime scene, right?
It could be.
Okay. Still a huge problem, right? That you have someone entering the crime scene.
It
I
could
think the
be.
witness has answered that
Yes,
first
sir.
question.
Now, you spent only a couple of minutes with him,
Correct.
and you don't record him,
I did not record him.
and the only thing you get from him is that he swept the right side of Shaman.
And he saw someone bleeding outside the car.
Okay. Now, at the time, you testified to Judge Locke that at the time you were concerned that he might have swept up shell casings.
Correct.
Okay. And you then made the determination that he was too far to the right to have picked up shell casings.
Correct.
Okay. Now, at the time of this incident, you're not aware of whether the gun used was a automatic or a revolver.
That is correct.
Okay. So shell casings is a distinctive possibility of finding something on the street, if in fact it was a semi-automatic.
That is correct.
Now, you're also aware at this point that the car that was allegedly shooting at the BMW was on the right side of the street.
He was on the right side of the BMW.
Correct. The right side of the street.
It was more to the middle of the street, actually.
You didn't see the shooting, did you, sir?
No, but I knew the car was shot from the right side of the street.
You're
right side
aware.
of the car.
You're aware that the street, the width of the street is 36 feet, right?
No, I am not.
Okay. You could see that night how far the street is.
Correct.
And you're also aware that there's just one, it's a one-way.
That's correct.
You're also aware that there are no distinctive lanes that tell you that divide the street in any way.
That is also correct.
Okay. So you don't know where the shooter's car is at the night of the shooting.
I know it's on the right side of the BMW.
Correct. That's all you know is that it's on the right side of the street.
Correct.
Correct? And you're aware.
Well, the
No,
answer is
right
the
side.
right side of the BMW, Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. And the right side of the BMW would be on the right side of the street?
Be on the right side of the BMW. I mean, depends how you look at it.
All right. Now, the BMW is not on the far left of the street, is it, sir?
It's to the far left, but not completely to the curb.
Correct. In fact, there's approximately 10 feet to the center of the street, is it not, sir?
I'm sorry?
It's approximately 10 feet to the center of the street, is it not, sir?
I do not know that measurement.
Okay. Can you see that clearly, sir? Can you, sir?
I have nothing.
Okay. You see that photograph, sir?
Can I move the easel?
Yes.
Anybody
All right.
mind? Yes, I can.
Okay. Do you see that the BMW is not flush on the left side of the street? There's actually some distance between the BMW and the left curb, correct?
Yes, I testified that a minute ago.
Okay. Now, the street goes out further, correct?
Correct?
And fair to say it has somewhat of a plane going downward on each side.
Correct.
Okay. Now, we know that the shooter's vehicle was on the right side of the BMW.
Correct.
Okay. You don't know how far exactly, do you?
Exactly, no.
Okay. You can only guesstimate.
Yes.
Okay. Now, fair to say that shell casings fly out of a gun, correct?
That's correct.
And you don't know what direction they go in.
They go back into the right.
Okay. But they can bounce off things and travel some
That is
distance,
correct.
right?
They do travel not too far, but they go back to the right.
And you don't know how many cars went through the scene in between the shooting and the street sweeper, do you, sir?
No, I do not.
And you didn't talk to enough witnesses that evening, as we've established you've only spoken to two, right?
Correct?
To get a full grasp of the potential distance of the crime scene.
No, overruled.
No, I did not.
In fact, the crime scene was spread out quite a distance, was it not? Meaning crime scene tape and the perimeters were quite set up quite a distance?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Minimum 50 feet in each direction? As possible?
As possible.
Okay. So the reason for setting up the perimeter so far out is to ensure that you go looking everywhere.
Counsel,
Right.
let's get to the heart of what's at issue here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you just made a determination based on your notes and everything that street sweeper was irrelevant because it was too far to the right. Is that your testimony?
That is my testimony.
Okay. Despite the fact that you don't know how far those shell casings could have traveled.
I don't think they traveled that far. It was my determination. That was the determination I made.
Now, you testified that you're not certain that Detective Sullivan's the one that told you what actually occurred, right? Actually, excuse me, strike that. You testified that Detective Sullivan was the one who ordered you to go speak to the street sweeper, right?
I'm almost positive it was Sergeant Detective Sullivan.
Okay. And when you went out and spoke with him, let me strike that. You mentioned that you spoke with him on Thursday, correct?
That's
It
correct.
being whom, sir?
Mr. McMasters. You spoke with him on Thursday?
That is correct.
And whose direction was this?
The prosecution?
Okay. Have you been watching this trial at all?
No, I have not.
Okay. So are you aware or have you been made aware as to the importance of the street sweeper?
No, I have not.
Now,
The answer may stand.
I'd like for you to take a look at the actual transcript. Now, the transcript before you, sir, is the actual transcript of the recording that you took of Mr. McMasters on Thursday, correct?
Correct.
And it lasted a total of 17 minutes, did it not?
That's about right.
Okay. And in the 17 minutes, this one you recorded.
That is correct.
Okay. Where the first one you did not. Now, in this recording, the obvious reason you're talking to him is you want to get information from him, right?
Correct.
And it's your goal to receive information as much as possible,
Correct.
not give it.
No, I'm trying to.
It's not your goal to influence a witness.
No,
It's not your goal to tell a witness things.
not my goal. No.
And certainly it would be improper of you to do so, would it not?
Sustained.
Is it the normal course of your business as a detective to give potential witnesses information before they testify at a trial?
Sustained. Mr. Baez, this is not a discovery tool for a later cross-examination. Let's get to the heart of the circumstances at issue here.
Yes, sir. I'd like to direct your attention to page 5, if I may. At the bottom of page 5, line 24, counsel, and 25, you then begin to discuss what he saw that evening, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, let's fast forward to page 7. Page 7, line 9, 10, and 11. You then inform on line 9, Mr. McMasters, you say, right, well, there's two sides of the street.
I say that.
Correct. And Mr. McMasters then says, yes, it's a one-way, but there's only one big open lane. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on page 10, if you can, line 8. This is when you first asked, who did you talk to when you got back to the scene?
Correct?
And he answers, there was like a detective there and a couple of Boston PD,
Okay?
right? That's an open-ended question that you asked him who he spoke to, right?
Correct.
And then he answers a detective and starts giving you information, right?
Correct.
Now, on line 23 is when you inform him that it was you that he spoke with. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's the first time you informed him that it was you that he spoke with.
Correct.
Now, on page 11, line 8, you then say to him, all right, because that night you didn't mention anything about this SUV and the girl hanging out. This is the first time you tell him that he did not tell you that evening.
Correct.
You're giving him this information.
No, I'm asking him why he didn't tell me this information before.
Okay. Do you use the word why, or you're telling him that he didn't give it to you?
No, he gave us information, and I go, because you didn't tell me that. I mean, I'm explaining to him that he didn't tell me that before.
Right. You're giving him the information. You're telling him that he didn't tell you that before.
Right.
You're not asking him why. You're telling him, right?
No, I get to that.
It seems to me it speaks for itself, counsel.
Okay. And then he answers, I'm 100% sure I stated that there was, and you cut him off, correct?
Uh-huh.
Next.
Well, it
Grounds.
was cut off.
Well, there's 4 dashes. Whether you cut them off, Judge, again, is really for the tape to answer. Detective McIsaac can tell from 4 dashes whether he cut them off or whether
We were talking over each other. I just object to the characterization.
Are you asking the witness what the transcript says or what he recalls?
Judge, I'll strike that portion of the
All right.
question, just to move it along. Now, on line 15, you say for a second time, yeah, but you never mentioned anything about a woman hanging out of the SUV. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then he responds, he's about 100% positive.
Read
of
it
this.
verbatim,
Yes.
please.
I'm pretty 100% positive of this. I stated that there was a girl. Honestly, the Boston PD was kind of treating me like dreadful. Like I tried to talk to my supervisor. They told me not to say none of it to no one. They said, keep your mouth shut or you're going to be arrested. Correct?
Correct.
All right. Then on page 12, you say to him again, and then, this is the 4th time, and then the 4th time you say to him, and when you spoke to me, you just didn't tell me. Correct?
Correct.
You're telling him that, for the 4th time now, that he didn't tell you this information, correct?
Overruled, if that's what you recall, Detective, you
Yeah,
may answer.
I'm explaining to him that he didn't tell me this before.
My question to you, sir, is you're telling him now for the 4th time.
Is it 4?
that-
Okay.
Yes. If you'd like, we can go
No,
back
that's
over
fine.
the first 3. Okay. The 4th time now, you're telling him that he did not tell you this information, correct?
Correct.
And then he says, and that's when he finally says, I just didn't even say anything.
Correct.
Okay. Then he tells you on page 14, I might not have told you, but I know I told other officers there, and when they had me go.
What line you want, sir?
Page line 14 through 16.
14 through 16, okay. Okay.
Okay. Now on line 22, you say to him, wait a minute, you dumped the hopper?
Line 22?
Yes, line 22.
That's an answer, not a question.
No, line 22 is a question, sir.
On page
What
14?
page?
Page 12.
You got me on 14.
No, I'm on page 12, as I've been reading.
You
Right.
just said 14 a second ago.
I was referring to line 14.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant to say
Counsel,
page
I was
14.
on page 14 as well.
Okay.
I apologize to
All right. You
Thank
want
you.
all of us now to be on page 12.
Please.
At what line?
Line 22.
Question.
Question. Wait a minute, you dumped the hopper. That's what you said to him now.
Correct, I was surprised.
This gives him an indication that you didn't know that he had dumped the hopper, correct?
Sustained as to the form.
Does this question, sir, indicate that for the very first time you're now telling him to wait a minute that he dumped the hopper, meaning you didn't know?
Yes, that's the first time I've heard of that. I was actually surprised. That's like, wait a minute.
Okay, now let's go to page 13.
13.
And then he refers to what he spoke to the officers
What line,
on
sir?
line 2.
2.
And you for the 5th time say, and me. Correct?
That's what it says, yes, that's correct.
All right. Now let's go to page 14. Lines 10 and 11. And here again you tell him after you spoke to me.
Correct.
Correct? You're informing him that this information was given to the police after he spoke to you.
Sustained in that form.
Okay. The purpose of you asking and after you spoke to me was what, sir?
Well, the question it comes from his response earlier. When
Correct.
he says the police officers, my question before was, the police officers were with you down at Frontage Road. He says, oh yeah, yes. And I went, after you spoke to me. These are all surprise answers to me.
Right. Now, at this point, this is the 6th time you let him know that he spoke to you that night, right?
He knows he spoke to me that night.
My question to you, sir, is this is the 6th time that you've informed him that he spoke to you that night.
Sustained.
No, the basis, so I can make sure I'm not repeating that
I
issue.
think you're mischaracterizing what the transcript says. All right, put a question to the witness,
Yes.
please.
At this point, sir, you have a witness telling you that he told you things for which are different than what you recall, correct?
It's not that I recall, it's that it didn't happen.
Well, that remains to be seen, sir. My question to you is simple.
No.
At this point, this gentleman is telling you things that are different than what you recall.
No, it never happened. It's
And
not that I
that-
don't recall. He never said those things before.
And that's because of that, of course, sir, we can never verify because you never recorded him that evening.
Sustained in that form.
There's no way of verifying that this never happened because you didn't record him the night of the incident, correct, sir?
Counsel, that is more properly argument to me.
There's no prior recording of you speaking to this gentleman, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to page 22. From on line 21, you then make a statement, and that's why you and I spoke that night. That's why you didn't tell me all of this other stuff. You made that. You asked him that question, right?
Correct?
And this is the 7th time you now tell him that you spoke with him that evening, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. Put a question.
Is this the 7th time that you told him at this point in the interview that you were the one that spoke with him that evening?
Objection.
Sustained.
going to direct your attention to page 25, lines 11 through 16. You make the statement. Now, what I'm saying, you and I had a conversation. You told me you were coming off. You were on the far side. You went by. You saw the BMW, and you kept going on your route until you were called back. I mean, you never told me anything about this white BMW or anything like that, white SUV.
Correct.
Make that statement, right?
I did.
And that would be the 8th time that you told him that you spoke with him that evening.
Sustained.
Further on down on page 25, lines 22. You state, well, no, I mean, I'm the one actually that actually spoke with you that night.
Correct.
Say that.
I did.
That again, you're informing him that you spoke with him that night.
Objection.
Well, no, that may stand. You may answer that question.
I did.
And then on page 26, you state to him, what I'm saying,
Line,
on
please.
lines 2, what I'm saying, you didn't tell me anything about the white SUV, is what I'm saying.
Correct, I said that.
And he answers, no, I probably did, maybe I mentioned it. Right?
Correct.
Now, earlier, after the fourth time you confronted him with the fact that you spoke with him that evening, he then said maybe he spoke to someone else. Correct?
Correct.
But now, after the 10th time of you mentioning it to him, that you spoke with him that evening, his answer changes to he's probably maybe mentioned it to you.
Well, it speaks for itself, counsel.
Sir, does it surprise you that you confronted him 10 times with the fact that you spoke with him that evening?
No, you may answer and you may explain your answer.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
And you gave him, and through the course of this information, you gave him this information, correct? This is not something that he volunteered to you,
Which information you talking about,
that
sir?
you spoke with him that night.
No, I kept saying over and over to him.
Now, you had another detective there with you, Detective Cummings, correct?
That is correct.
And did it occur to you at any point in time there might be a conflict of interest with the fact that you spoke with him the evening of the incident, and now he's saying that he had informed you of something completely different?
Objection.
No, you may answer that if you viewed that as a conflict of interest.
Not at all.
He was accusing you, or he was actually, let me rephrase that.
Yes,
Because he
please.
wasn't accusing you. He was stating that he spoke with a detective, right?
Correct.
And you believe that detective to be you.
I know that detective to be me.
You don't know if he spoke with other detectives, do you, sir?
I'm going to say no, he didn't.
Okay. You were watching him the entire 4 hours he was
No,
there at the
I
scene.
wasn't.
Okay. So you don't know
Sustained.
if another officer, if another detective approached him at any given time.
I know the detectives who were on scene, and no one spoke to him but me.
And you were watching these detectives the entire time of the evening.
No, I wasn't.
Okay. And you also weren't watching the detectives when you went to the hospital to speak with Mr. Freer.
No, I wasn't.
Okay. So obviously you don't know what those detectives were doing while you were at the hospital.
All right, I was not watching the entire time. That is correct.
And it never occurred to you to allow Detective Cummings to be the one to interview him, since he was informing you at that time that he did give you this information.
Detective Cummings participates in the interview.
I know that, but he didn't take over the interview. You continued, correct?
There are times where Detective Cummings does direct questions.
You didn't back off and allow Detective Cummings to complete the interview.
Objection.
I think the transcript speaks for itself, Mr. Bias.
Yes, sir. Judge. Sir, did you take photographs or direct anyone to take photographs of the street sweeper?
I did not.
Okay. Did you get the dimensions of the street sweeper to see exactly how far out from the street that the street sweeper may have covered?
No, I did not.
Do you know exactly how far a street sweeper would cover on the street?
I did it by eye. I could guess maybe 8 to 9 feet, maybe a little less.
So you just gave it a good glance at that night and made a determination?
Correct.
And who from the prosecution had asked you to speak with him on Thursday?
I believe it was Mr. Hagan and Mr. Lee.
Okay. Now, did you watch at any time this specific street sweeper sweep any part of the street?
Did I? No,
Yes.
sir, I did not.
Okay. So you have no idea how much of the area it affects?
Just a little less than the width of the street sweeper, I suppose.
Okay. You don't know if anything sweeps out as it's or blows out as it's sweeping through the area, do you, sir?
Blows out, sir?
Yes. Does any debris come out at all?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. Just one moment, Judge. And finally, sir, there were on 3 occasions where Mr. McMasters, through the interview, informs you that he's 100% sure that he told the detective that of the information of the BMW, correct?
It speaks for itself, counsel.
I have no further questions.
You need redirect.
One question. Detective McIsaac, during the time that you spoke to Mr. McMasters, both on the night of July 16th, 2012, as well as the recorded interview this past Friday, this past Thursday, March 2nd, 2017, did he ever indicate to you that he heard gunshots as he was driving past the BMW?
He's never mentioned that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. You may
Thank you,
step
Your Honor.
down.
Can I have just one, Judge, please? May I have a follow-up? No further questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We keep going here. All right, counsel, we are in the court lunch hour, although we've squandered most of the morning. Anyone have preference as to whether we ought to break for 30 minutes or keep going?
I'd ask that we press on, Your Honor.
You would. Mr. Baez?
Judge, we would ask for a break.
Of course.
Pass out.
30 minutes. Quarter of 2, have a witness on that stand.
All rise.